Also, I'm a young woman of color. I'm 32. I'm an immigrant from Syria. I have a stake in the game. I will live the climate crisis if nothing changes. And I really feel like we need representation. We need young leaders to step up and change Canadian politics. Unfortunately, if us, the youth, don't get involved, and if socialists and intersectional feminists don't get involved to make the choices necessary to save us from extinction and from the system, who will?
Welcome back to the Budrino Politics podcast, everybody. I'm Kiefer, your host, aka Budrino, and today we have a very special guest with us, Meryam Haddad. How are you doing today, Meryam?
Very good. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thanks for coming on. It's great to have you on. So I'll start off today by asking you to talk a little bit about yourself and the politics you represent.
Okay, so I'm 32. I'm a socialist. I immigrated to Canada from Syria with my family in '93. I'm a lesbian. The past 7 years, I've been an immigration lawyer specializing in refugee claims from the Middle East, mostly stateless Palestinians, but also Syrians and Yemenis. I also represented a lot of queer folks from the Middle East. Last fall, I joined the Green Party and ran during the last federal campaign. And I'm running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada because I feel like I will be able to inspire and attract the biggest block of voters to join our movement. The millennials and the Gen Zs will have the power to change the outcome of the next election. So, and the Greens absolutely need to be stronger and more influential in Ottawa. It's just a question of survival at the end for my generation and the next ones. And part of my politics are, the plan is to build a Green New Deal that leaves no one behind. And there are bold ideas to tackle climate change and having at the core of all of them decolonization and social justice.
Okay. And speaking of that, I know a lot of listeners are my age. A lot of us are millennials, and a lot of us are stuck working jobs that we hate and we're underemployed and we're not paid enough for and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I read on your website that through school and university, you worked many different types of minimum wage jobs. I was just wondering if you could talk about your experience, what that was like, and graduating with stuff like student debt.
Yeah, well, I worked many jobs. I worked at a petrol station, at Petro-Canada, night shifts. I worked at a video store when it was still popular. And I worked also as a cashier in a drugstore, in cafeterias of government buildings. I also worked in restaurants, and for sure, like I had, even at some point during my law school, I had to work 25 hours a week. I did not have the best support. First of all, like the student loans and that were given were too low to be able to just study and focus on my studying. And yeah, like I came out during that same amount, like around the same time. So it was difficult. I had to work pretty much like a part-time job of 25 hours a week. It's a lot. And yeah, I still ended up with a significant debt of almost $40,000. But yeah, like that's pretty much how a lot of young people go through the same thing. And for sure that free education, free universities, tuitions is something that I strongly advocate for. And it's part of the policies of the Green Party of Canada.
That's definitely something for me too. And for I know a lot of other people listening to the show, going to school and working at the same time is just so difficult. And especially when you have peers who don't have to do that, you're just put at such a significant disadvantage.
Yes.
The others.
We were supposed to start with the same opportunities. It should be like that. We don't decide where in what amount or in which family that has like on what's the wages of our parents and how much money they're making. But I come from a humble background, and my parents like helped me out. Don't get me wrong. They did a lot. They did as much as they could, but it's just very unfortunate that we just don't start our life in the same position as like others, but we need to have some universal services. One of them is to actually be able to go to university without being worried about paying the tuitions, and not starting your adult life and in your professional life with a small mortgage to pay off.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty brutal for us millennials out here.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of things that are frustrating, and yes, also young people will be feeling the most the impact of this pandemic and the economical crisis. We are ones of the most impacted by the lack of jobs, and young people suffer from that.
Yeah, and especially even like middle class people I know are struggling right now, and to me that's a pretty big alarm going off. Is when I see people who are, the families are pretty well off, but I've seen some people my age just move back home. I think I saw a statistic that like over 1 million young adults moved back home with their parents since the pandemic started, just because of the mass unemployment and stuff like that.
Yes, it's pretty brutal. Like the millennials, we've been, and I've lived through the past a bit more than 10 years. We went through two economical crises. It's brutal for millennials to go through this over and over again and be impacted by certain things, by crises that end up being created by the system that we live in and capitalism. Yeah.
And it definitely doesn't help when like older people tell people like us to stop buying avocado toaster, stuff like that, stop eating takeout, and that'll solve all our problems.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I agree.
So for the next question, I'll ask here. I know majority of people listening to the show are socialists and intersectional feminists, but I know a lot of people are skeptical about political parties and the political system. What would your message be to people who might be skeptical about joining the Green Party, but who share similar values with you?
I felt the same, I felt the same way about politics and politicians. And I mean, nobody looks like me in politics. My political participation was basically only based on me voting and going to demonstrations. And but unfortunately, if us, the youth, don't get involved, and if socialists and intersectional feminists don't get involved to make the choices necessary to save us from extinction and from the system, who will? And I felt a sense of responsibility towards us. And I am at the intersection of many equity-seeking groups, and I understand the skepticism of some listeners, and there's a lot of work to be done within the party to become diverse. That's one of the things that are lacking. And if I become the leader, I will make sure to have a diverse slate of candidates for the next campaign, and they will run in ridings that can be won. We won't be tokenized. That's what I could say. And there's no federal political party on the left at the moment. And if you are a socialist who joins the Green Party of Canada, just to vote for a young socialist leader, it will have a ricochet effect on the NDP and other parties. And if the Green Party of Canada starts to occupy the left-wing space, we could change Canadian politics by making it a race to the left, rather than a race to the center-right, which is what has been happening for the past decades. And we just got a unique opportunity to have a truly progressive leader in Canada who wants change. And the Green Party has only 25,000 members. That means that if young people, just few, and socialists join the Green Party of Canada, we can shape the party and the future of the political landscape in Canada. And also, as a truly grassroots party, the platform is made by the membership. We already have the most progressive policies on most issues. Okay, we could still improve them and improve our party's policies and make it reflect our values even more. And I see the Green Party of Canada as the parliamentary vehicle and a voice for activists and youth, millennials and Zoomers of this country, to bring a real change. And at the end, time is running out. You know, what happens in the next 5 to 10 years will define just our future and our existence on this planet.
Yeah, I definitely see that, especially when you mentioned how many members there are. That was a topic I discussed on the show before, just how important leadership races are for changing a party's policies or making them more progressive and stuff like that. And I'd like to say to viewers right now, it's, you know, a handful of people can really make a difference in these types of elections, just because there's not that many people. It's not millions of people voting like the general election.
Exactly.
These elections are really important. They can be very narrow, and a handful of people signing up can change the entire future of the political party.
That's exactly it, and I think people should do that for every single party, even like the conservative race. It depends who wins, you know. Like we could see things that are different coming from each leader, you know. So it's important to participate, and even like for NDP members, if they do join the Green Party of Canada to vote for me. And to vote for a socialist to be the leader, that will encourage even Jagmeet Singh to go on the left also and to become more progressive. I know it's important for him, you know. So it's really a question of having all the political parties going to like participating in a race to the left. I really see it happening, and it doesn't mean that these NDP members will have to stay with the Green Party of Canada. They can just simply participate in our election and then go back to the NDP. Nothing stops them from doing so. This is how it's important, the participation of everybody. As you said it very well, it's the size and the structure of the Green Party of Canada makes it a perfect tool to be able to become the voice of the progressives of this country.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question I'll ask is about basically just about socialism. I've talked about socialism on the show before for certain listeners and stuff, but I was wondering, what does socialism mean for you?
Well, it means that all the policies that I am a socialist, but for me, what it means is that all the policies have at their core social justice. It's also for me that all together we have a common goal for the well-being. We have a common goal that we're all going towards, and we need everybody on board to be able to achieve it. And the climate crises, we need everybody on board to be able to achieve it, and that means that everybody needs to live in dignity to be able to participate in that fight. Because somebody who is struggling to survive and to have a meal on his table and to feed their children will not have necessarily, might want to participate in fighting against climate change, but won't have necessarily the capacity to do so. So that's what it means for me.
That's cool. So one of the other topics I've covered over the last few months is mainstream media and how it's typically usually very hostile towards socialists or even people who are somewhat left-wing leaning. Examples of that would be like with Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or even Jeremy Corbyn and stuff like that. If you were leader of the Green Party, how would you combat that kind of hostility from mainstream media that they usually have against socialists?
You know, we've been already struggling. The Green Party of Canada was struggling with mainstream media in the past. It's the same way that they were hostile to us by the way they were covering us during the last federal election. We don't get much attention, and when we do, it's most of the time when there are scandals and unimportant drama going on, you know. not real topics, not real, they don't really discuss our policies. But that's completely fine, you know, because we have the alternative media to turn to. There are podcasts that exist where we can pass our message to the people who have a distrust of politics and politicians and of the mainstream media anyways. There's a lot of folks like that. And it's these folks that we need to attract and inspire, and that will vote for us if we are clear on what we stand for. That's the way I see it. We could also be very strong on social media. This is another way to be able to pass our message. The mainstream media might not be on our side, but the alternative media will. And we can have very strong and inspiring social media campaigns.
How do you think the media's covered like the green leadership race so far?
Well, there were some problems that happened within, like during the leadership race. There were some racist comments that happened from one of the leadership contestants that ended up being just put on, like he was removed from the leadership race. So the mainstream media covered that. And there's also, we were some kind of, we were a victim of a cyber attack during one of the town hall debates, the one that happened in the Prairies regional town hall debate. And that was covered also by the mainstream media. Just some, when it has to do with news or when there are some criticism towards the Green Party of Canada, we see the mainstream media react to it, but that's pretty much it. Though, who knows how things will change in the future. Maybe we'll get the mainstream media if it becomes a bit more healthy, depending on the changes that are done, and if, I mean, CBC, for example, or if other less mainstream media get more funds from the government, for example, we might see a change in that. Maybe the mainstream media will become more healthy. I'm completely fine with it, and there are solutions to be covered and to reach out our message to the most people, people as possible. So I'm not worried about that.
There's definitely something I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to help people, especially people who are newer to politics, understand where the different candidates fit on the political spectrum, because I find that especially for people who are not, like for me, it's easy to say because I've done a degree in political science, but even for someone like me going and like researching stuff like that about the different candidates and their policies, I find that can be very difficult for like an average everyday person. And also it's just time consuming.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I find that that's kind of what one of the goals I'm trying to do here is help people understand where the candidates fit. Because I find mainstream media with politics doesn't really talk about that enough. They'll like you just said, they'll cover the negative stuff, but they won't say like, here's where the candidates fit, here what are their policies and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So and unfortunately that's the way it is, and most of the time what we see in mainstream media are just bad news, right? And negative stuff. So it's we appreciate people like you that have podcasts and that spread message that can be positive and show the different candidates and different political opinions and the leadership contest, like the one of the Green Party of Canada, and how we have a slate of candidates that is very different from one another, and they are pretty much everywhere on the political spectrum, honestly. So it's important to cover, to show where we stand, where each of the candidates stand on the policies of the Green Party of Canada that are the most progressives on most issues. Yeah.
So one of the things I focus on just in general is I try to make politics a little bit more entertaining, or try and make it funny or comedic and stuff like that. One of the ways I do that, and I know a lot of people on the left do that, is through stuff like memes and parody videos and stuff like that. Do you think memes and like that type of online content has a role in like political elections and political discourse among people?
Of course, and it is part. It's important to pass our message. These memes, they go viral, you know. So we as much clicks on certain issues or certain memes that are funny, and comedy is something that people like to see on social media. So it is part of, it is a tool like another that is strong and can be inspiring. Yes.
Cool. So I know a few listeners have messaged me and said that they're down to deciding between you and Dimitri on who they're going to vote for, like to put in first place in their votes for the Green Party leadership. Mm-hmm. What differences would you say you have with him in policy?
Well, me and Dimitri align politically on pretty much everything. I'm talking about building a Green New Deal. That he is not talking about that. I'm talking about a green federal jobs guarantee that goes hand in hand with a universal basic income. This will be very, very important in the transition of our economy. And to have a just transition, of course. And also, I'm a young woman of color. You know, I'm 32. I'm an immigrant from Syria. I have a stake in the game. I will live the climate crisis if nothing changes. And I really feel like we need representation. We need young leaders to step up and change Canadian politics. So that's how I see, this is the main difference between me and Dimitri, because politically we align. And yeah, like we do have bold ideas, and we're presenting things like the Green New Deal, and we're talking about phasing out fossil fuels by 2030. So we are like taking and talking about, and our message is are more clear on how to fight the climate crisis. While taking into consideration social justice, and that we're able to be fighting this crisis all together. So I'm talking a lot more about policy and what new policies could be voted by the members in the future. I'm talking about the members of the Green Party of Canada, because yes, we are a grassroots party, just like I said a bit earlier.
You and Dimitri would definitely be like the most left-wing candidates in this race, you would say, right?
Definitely, yes. And we're both openly socialists. The other candidates are not. I could say Amita Kuttner is also on the left wing, but the other candidates are all, if not like on the center, and some on the center right.
Yeah, and I've definitely noticed that, like economically.
Oh yeah. And economically, or when, for example, certain questions are asked and like there's no like straight up answer.
That's the other thing. Yeah, kind of like a vague.
Yeah, like, but they're progressive, but they don't really answer the questions. That's another signal that the person is usually a centrist or on the center right of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. And for me, like the show, like listeners know, it's about like eco-socialism, intersectional feminism, and Indigenous rights. And I definitely think that's where you hit on all three categories, and where definitely. A lot of the other candidates kind of hit. They might hit one, or they might hit two, but they don't hit all the policy on all the fronts on those issues.
Yeah, I've been advocating for defunding the police and decolonization, which other candidates have not really been talking about. So yeah, like I do talk about Indigenous rights, and like we want to build this Green New Deal hand in hand with the Indigenous communities as equal. They are at the front lines of the climate crisis, and they have the experience of living through apocalypse that is still ongoing. Colonialism is an apocalypse for Indigenous communities. And of course, like building this Green New Deal, they will be building it with us hand in hand. It's their decision at the end, you know. It's they are their own voice, and they will take the decision, their own decisions about their sovereignty, and we need to encourage their sovereignty and their fight against for all their fights for their sovereignty, we should be with them fighting. So it's so I'm talking about all these subjects, and yeah, that's it.
And that's what I would definitely say too, because I noticed with when people are talking about like defunding the police, and I've seen even some like kind of like social democrats or even like centrists start saying that, which is a big change for someone like me who like I started caring about like Black Lives Matter, like it was back in high school for me with Trayvon Martin and stuff like that. And for someone, when I saw that change and I saw a lot more centrists talking about that and talking about Black Lives Matter and talking about defund the police, one thing I'd really like to like talk to those people about is that like you're the candidate who actually wants to defund the police. There's very few candidates who in Canadian politics who actually want to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when people say those slogans, and they'll say it online and they'll say, "Oh, I support this," but when it comes to actually supporting these policies, I don't think you can say stuff like you care about Black Lives Matter and you vote for Justin Trudeau, because those two things just don't go together.
No, because placing a knee on the ground doesn't do anything if the policies don't change. And like at the end, essentially, I'll just talk about the RCMP because it's a police, it's an institution that is federal, and they were originally created to displace Indigenous people from their lands, and the ones that weren't cooperating would be starved to death. So, and the RCMP continues carrying out violence against Indigenous people, as well as racialized and as well as poor and mentally ill and marginalized people, So there are many people that are targeted. And so the RCMP is fundamentally a brutal and punitive institution. They are at the complete opposite of what the communities need. The communities that are increasingly struggling with health, poverty, and well-being, and the funding of the RCMP must stop. And the RCMP and all the police must be disarmed and dismantled at some point. It's a long-term thing, and we need to increase the funding to social services that allow our communities to be healthy and well. And we're talking about services such as affordable housing and education and universal pharmacare and universal mental health services and community centers. And there's so many things that can be done to just address the root issues of crime rates and criminalization. And the moment that you address these root issues and you dismantle the police, well, the criminalization significantly decrease. It's all about reimagining community safety in a way that it's just non-punitive and just focused on rehabilitation instead. And at the end, and I advocate for it, and I'm very, very I strongly advocate for it because this is I'm following the lead of many scholars and the activists who have proposed that defunding the RCMP is what the communities need to thrive. Like the usual answer that we get is that, but how can you deal with criminality? We know we cannot bulldoze prisons and shut down all policing institutions tomorrow, especially that they have been all the time they have been advanced as the solution to societal issues, but we are in a long game committed to societal restructuring, and the Green New Deal that I've been talking about, one of the bold ideas must include defunding the RCMP.
Yeah, and like speaking of that, I made a post a while ago about Chantel Moore and how she was murdered by police as an Indigenous woman, and I compared it and contrasted to that guy, I think his name's Corey, whatever, the one who tried to attack Trudeau with a bunch of guns, and how he tried to attack the Prime Minister with a bunch of guns. The cops sat with him, I think it was for an hour or two, to talk him down and arrest him, and he wasn't even hurt. And Chantel Moore, this young Indigenous woman, was literally killed by police. And that post, I think like 300,000 people saw it. So what I'd like to say to those people who saw it is, if you're if if that kind of resonated with you and you're thinking about that and you're thinking about why was Chantal Moore murdered and why was the white guy, how did they manage to arrest him without even hurting him? I'd encourage those people to listen to what you're saying and listen to politicians and people running in leadership positions like you who actually have a plan to address this and stop this. And like you said, the academic evidence around this it's really undisputed. It's just an issue of public opinion and certain people, they're so pro-police or whatever, but the academic evidence about this stuff, there's so many studies on drug decriminalization and prison abolition and just different stuff like that show society can be better.
And decriminalization of sex work, for example. Sorry about
exactly.
that. Like even like there's so many things that must be decriminalized to address the root issues. And yeah, like at the end, we gotta find a way to address systemic racism and colonial violence, And if the institutions are fundamentally built on racism and colonial violence, well, we must dismantle them. And yes, there are many scholars that are working on that. I know in Carleton University and Ottawa U, there's a bunch of professors and students that are working and advancing and advocating for prison abolition and police abolition, and of course, it's a long-term policy. We have to see it on the long term, and it's a bit the same way as we see the long-term fight for the environment. But now there's just no time to waste. We only have like 5 to 10 years to react, and it's more like 5 to 7 years if we want to be realistic.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, time's definitely running out. I'll get to some of the listener questions here.
Yes.
I'll start off with the first one. It says, my question would be in regards to the realities of parliamentary elections, specifically what Meryam thinks is the optimal route to enact a Green New Deal, restructuring the Canadian economy. Would that be working for general election reform? I guess like PR, like proportional representation, working with the Liberal government on a bargaining system or some kind of coalition with the NDP?
Yeah, well, they're all of the above, honestly. So I know that PR is what we need to fight for. What can be done is that all the oppositions can have an agreement prior to the elections. To that if one of us win, that we absolutely have, like, for example, not necessarily a referendum, but to implement PR for a certain amount of elections, and then after that we can have a referendum, just like they did in New Zealand, and also during the PR, the proportional representation campaign, we must popularize only one system voting instead of going on all of them and showing all of them and which one is the best, because at the end people do want a better democracy and want a proportional representation, but the specifics of each different systems is not something that they necessarily put a lot of attention to. But before we get to a PR, because as I said, like we just don't have any kind of time to waste. A collaboration will be very, very important. We do need. I'm not saying that we need to become only one party, us and the NDP, not at all, but there are possibilities of collaboration during the elections. The plan is to save us from extinction, and I'm sure that we can unite with other parties and MPs that share our values and goals. And my plan is, as the leader, after asking the membership of the party, if we can have this capacity to collaborate with other parties during the election, I can ask, for example, Jagmeet Singh, can we collaborate on certain writings and see how we can go forward to make sure that we unite the left. If even if he refuses this option, I would still go ahead and decide to place, for example, paper candidates against Nikki Ashton or Leah Gazan, because we want these MPs at the House of Commons. There's just no point having a strong Green candidate who might jeopardize their seat in the House. We want them with us in the House in Ottawa and fighting for our goals.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely have my criticism of the NDP, but like you just mentioned, Leah Gazan, Nikki Ashton, I like Matthew Green too. There's a few NDP MPs that are like kind of similar on the kind of further left than the party. I would say that's definitely one criticism I have of the NDP is the federal party is what it is. There's a couple really good members, but the party itself, it's definitely not like a, some people wouldn't call it a left-wing party. I kind of say it's more of like a center-left party.
Yeah.
There are certain members, but that's the other thing too. It's kind of like what you mentioned is that the party in Canada, the parties vote with their parties, and if you vote against your party, the party whip will punish you, and you'll get kicked out of the caucus. So there's a problem there.
Yeah, but we gotta do politics differently in the next few years. We don't have a choice. It's a question of survival at the end, and yeah, like there is a strong allegiance to certain socialist members of the NDP, but let's just say that it's very, very hard to be able to move the party to the left. There are certain members and organizations affiliated with the NDP that are advocating for socialism and that try to find candidates for socialism that are socialists in certain writings and stuff, and they are finding it extremely, extremely hard to move the party to the left, extremely hard. Because of the amount of members and because how much of the unions are strong within the party. And I advocate for strong unions. I believe that strong unions make strong workers and strong workers make strong economies. Like I believe in that, and the Green Party of Canada is not against unions at all. I'm very much for unions. But at the same time, we have an opportunity to have all the political parties going a bit more left, including the NDP specifically. If we have a leader who is openly a socialist of the Green Party of Canada, it will bring everybody on the left. We're going to be occupying a space, and yeah, like it's very important to get us there. And move all the policies to the left.
And that's another topic I talked about is like shifting the Overton window to the left in Canada. And that's one thing that I encourage people who might be kind of NDP partisans. I know there's a few of you listening right now who might be, upset that we're saying this about the NDP, but when it comes to being left-wing, if you identify as a socialist or left-wing or stuff like that, there are ways to improve. And a perfect example, I would say, with the NDP platform last election was they didn't have anything really for student debt forgiveness besides getting rid of the interest rates. But when I saw that, I was really disappointed last election because I'm watching Joe Biden in the United States, and even Joe Biden in that ridiculous campaign, he's proposing some form of student debt forgiveness. So to me, on that specific issue, it's not a good look if you're to the center of Joe Biden.
Yeah, I agree or the wealth tax that is not high enough. I know that in the platform it wasn't high enough, and even like I'm not saying that the Green Party platform was actually how can I say, we could have much more like a platform that is way more clear on what the members stand for and what the members voted as policies for the party, and yeah, it's just within the Green Party of Canada, there is a possibility to because of the fact that it's small and because of the number of members and also because of the structure of it, it makes it easier to bring forward left policies. So yeah, and it's important to speak in a clear way, and more members, and I'm just talking just in general, this campaign that I have, there's concerning the volunteers, we were able to attract like 40 volunteers that had nothing to do with politics before, and they were just inspired by the campaign. And we were even able to attract 10 members of the NDP to join the campaign because I'm a socialist candidate, and they see it as an opportunity. But their allegiance after the race and after I become the leader, they might go back to the NDP afterwards. So this is how it's presented. And I respect the members of the NDP, and I respect the allegiance that they have for the NDP. We're just talking about the problem of Canadian politics where everybody's just racing towards the center and the right instead of going left and what for the people at the end. The politicians and political parties should represent the interest of us, and honestly, they've been representing just the interest of the few. Just a few, and yeah, another thing about the NDP that gives us a lot of it's like provincial NDP governments ended up not taking necessarily the right decisions for the people. For example, now the NDP government of BC is just gave some permits to mine coal in 2020. Like we're in the middle of a climate emergency, and it does not make any kind of sense.
And that's definitely the position I find myself in, is that I used to, in the last NDP leadership race, I voted in it. I voted for Nikki Ashton, and the type of journalism I do try and practice is that I will be open about my beliefs, but I also will be like objective in my analysis and stuff like that. And that's obviously what I plan on doing, is voting in the Green Party leadership. And I won't lie to viewers. I definitely probably will vote for you first, and then probably Dimitri second. But that kind of idea, which you said, I think that's really important for people to understand, is that I know some people who are listening, you might have this kind of emotional attachment to the NDP, but they're probably not going to have a leadership race. I think they're probably going to keep Jagmeet Singh. So there really is kind of inherent value in trying to shift parties left. And like we discussed earlier before, if there's like 25,000 people voting, there's going to be hundreds of people who hear this. If everyone signs up, that could really make a significant difference in the political outcome, because it's been a long time since Elizabeth May became leader of the Greens. Like I've always been interested in politics. I was like a political nerd when I was a kid. And I remember seeing her, I was like a kid when I think I first saw her. And this is a really important election for the Canadian left, because like you mentioned before, there's a really wide range of candidates in the Green Party leadership. There's some centrist ones, there's some right-wing ones sort of that have like right-wing kind of economic beliefs, I guess I would say, and then certain environmental ones. And that's something that I really wish the media would be a little bit more, would cover the race a little bit more, because this is a really significant development in Canadian politics. The direction the Green Party goes is going to be absolutely huge.
It's a historical opportunity that we have right here during this leadership race. It's not only historical for our own party, but it's historical in Canadian politics.
So we'll get to the next question here. Someone asked, I'm wondering what Meryam's thoughts are on how to flip the West's economy onto something greener. And I'll extend this question to, I guess, as well as like, how would you frame making the West economies more greener to like everyday people out there?
Um, you're talking about the Western countries, right? Is that what?
Alberta.
Okay. Well, well, okay. What I could say is I'm not an economist. Okay, I'm not a specialist, but I surround myself with intelligent people, and I listen. I have spoken to one economist, D. T. Cochrane. And he's from York University, and I know that it is possible to transition our economy, and it's about like implementing jobs also. You know, like people are really scared. It's all about the workers at the end. You know, people have been scared to lose their jobs. They're scared of that transition. And as long as we're able to present it to them that the transition will be fair for everybody, it will create a quality, sustainable jobs for everybody, for the fossil fuel workers, and that they're not going to be left behind. We'll be able to have them on board, and and if some of them, for example, want to retire or to study. Free education is important for them to go into another field, or a universal basic income can help them actually decide to open their own company, for example. This is why a green federal jobs guarantee and a universal basic income are important to implement at the same time and within a Green New Deal. And if we're able to make people understand that it's nobody will be left behind in this transition, we'll have people on board. That's pretty much how we see it, and we've been talking to a lot of people about this, and people are understanding more and more that this argument that, oh, we're going to lose so many jobs is just not a valid argument anymore. The quality jobs that I'm talking about are in infrastructure, okay? They are in infrastructure, in decontamination, we want to also nationalize internet. So the infrastructure the grid needs to get to very secluded areas. This will create a lot of jobs. And also, another thing is that it's jobs also caring for other people are green jobs, like jobs in childcare, jobs in long-term care. There's also jobs in care for like, let's say, technology to repair some obsolete or like to repair some tech instruments or things, you know. It's just about like creating a new economy that cares for the planet and cares for the people, and where we have jobs that are locally based. So this is what we've been talking about, and it's been convincing to most people. Yes.
I watched that video with you and David Murner when you were talking about socialism. I think this topic came up, and I find it interesting because like I've worked in a lot of different like random blue collar jobs, and I've met a lot of people who've worked on oil fields.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting because every single one of them has been laid off or fired or whatever at some point. The jobs are not stable, but I find that there's a culture that they kind of belong to with it.
Yeah. It's the jobs are not only not stable, but they're very hard on their health also.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're suggesting jobs that are quality jobs, unionized with benefits and jobs where they're gonna stay healthy and they're sustainable in time, well, you'll have them on board, you know. Like, it's if you're suggesting an option that is better than what they already have, why would they not be on board to transition?
I think at the start they might be hostile just because there's such a distinct provincial culture with conservatism and like certain things within Alberta that where I think they might at the start they might be like, oh, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to sign up. But once a couple of their buddies, I just see it once a couple of their friends end up getting a green job, whether it be installing solar panels or upgrading internet, and they're making better money, it's more stable, it's safer. Once that happens, I feel like no matter what attachment they have to the oil industry, they're going to leave at some point. Like, I think those people really could change, despite the fact that they have this emotional tie to the oil industry. I think, like exactly like you said, once that changes, I could see those people I met, if they were offered a better paying job that was safer and more reliable, they would take it. They would give up their tie to the oil industry and wherever they were working and stuff like that.
Exactly, and there's some organizations of fossil fuel workers called Iron and Earth who are advocating for to transition into a green economy, and that are advocating for the fossil fuel workers and what they actually need, and what we're suggesting about the education to get to be able to be part of that transition into with infrastructure while we have green energy that is implemented. It's one of the things that we've been talking about, but it's so there are a lot of fossil fuel workers that are advocating for this transition, but this transition needs to be just, and they will not be left behind.
And I'll get to one of the last questions here. Basically, one of the listeners who I know very well was just wondering what your policies are regarding like the art field and funding, because they were telling me about like how after Black Lives Matter, like there's kind of been this movement within art to certain people are really trying to push for more diversity within art, like federally funded stuff in Canada, but also like kind of like an economic transition. A lot of people are, including within Black Lives Matter, people are talking about trying to, I guess, like the economic component of Black Lives Matter. They want like not just making stuff more diverse, but also making sure there's better paying jobs for people of color and stuff like that. So what would your kind of stance be towards like art and like federal funding from the government?
Art was about the New Deal in the U.S. Art was an important part of the New Deal, and there was a lot of art that are still exposed until today that were done by artists during the New Deal era, and I believe we should be. It should be the same within the Green New Deal that we want to build. So it could be through a green federal jobs guarantee where artists would be paid to make some art, or just the ones that don't want to necessarily be employee of the government. They can just have their universal basic income and be able to live in dignity and do what they want to do, which is like make art. And yeah, that would be one of the. This would be a solution for art funding.
Yeah, and that would, I think, directly address the problems that I know a few people in the art field right now, and a lot of them are people who have, they're very qualified for their jobs. They have master's degrees, they have various different stuff, but finding a job is just so hard in those communities, especially stable jobs, decent paying ones with benefits or stuff like that.
Developing art, and it's a very essential and very important part of our society, of any society. Art should always be pushed by the governments.
That's cool. So at this point, I'll ask, is there anything else you'd like to discuss?
Not really. I think we covered pretty much everything. For sure, it's very important to encourage your listeners to join the Green Party of Canada and to vote. It's a ranked ballot, so it does make a difference to participate and to try to get a socialist leader of the Green Party of Canada.
So I'll include all the links for people listening on Twitter, Facebook. I will include the link to Meryam's website, to donate, and also to how to become a Green Party member. I think the election starts online, is it September 3rd? it
Uh,
starts?
no, it starts on the 26th of September, but the new members, they have to join before the 3rd of September to be able to participate in the election. Concerning the new members, even when you become a new member, and you go through the my own donation page, your membership fee can actually go towards the entrance ticket of $30,000 to be able to continue being part of this race. So I really need the help of everybody. It is a small donation of $10 at the end, and a membership for 1 year is $10. Any kind of help of small donation can help to build our movement.
And I imagine that's really important, especially with like the pandemic and stuff like that. It must be really hard to run a campaign right now,
Oh,
trying to get
definitely.
funding and stuff like
Oh,
that when you can't
definitely.
do stuff
And I'm
really in
young.
person.
Yeah, and I'm young. I'm 32. I'm an immigrant. There are many things that make me, in a certain way, that it's harder than others to actually get donation. It's even worse when during pandemics. But honestly, like we've had a lot of support so far. I haven't like we haven't. We're not yet. We don't have that $30,000 yet, but we need your help. And the deadline for the payment is the 1st of September. So I strongly suggest people, like if they want to encourage our campaign and our movement, to join the party, and so their fee to join, to become a member, goes to our campaign.
Okay, and like you said, that's through your website. They can sign up for the party and do that all through there.
Exactly. It's through the donation, actually, my donation page of the website of the Green Party of Canada. I think you mentioned that it could be through my website. There's a link, donate, or the website of the Green Party of Canada, like where my name is mentioned. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I definitely noticed that. I noticed that a lot of other candidates, they have a lot more capital, whether that be economic, and there's a former Liberal MP running, isn't there? Is that David
Yeah,
Murray, I
yeah.
think?
There's Glenn Murray, who's a federal. He used to be a minister, actually, of the Kathleen Wynne government. He was, I believe, the environment minister at some point, and maybe transport or industry or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And he was also the mayor of Winnipeg in the past. So yeah, so there are other candidates who are of like, I mean, they have the network to be able to get their entrance fee, and any kind of help and small donations are super welcome, and I would be very thankful for all your help.
Exactly, and like some of those people, like they also have whether they used to be an MP and they have a bunch of money or whatever, but they also have like connections, like you said, like cultural and social capital with bigger media organizations. Not Budrino Politics. Budrino Politics is not a big media organization, but I really like to emphasize that to people, that you're a working class person. You're not one of these people who has a ton of these like large scale connections. So you really do, it's really important for people to give you this support, especially if you're on the fence about it.
Yeah,
Like we mentioned before, there's like 25,000 people voting. A handful of people could really make a significant difference in this.
exactly.
And like we discussed, the Green Party hasn't had a new leader in a really long time. There's a really large potential for socialists and people, intersectional feminists, and people who care about Indigenous rights to really fundamentally change the course of the party. And the other thing I'll say too, just before we end here, is that the Green Party, I think they're polling at like 7.5% right now federally. Last time I checked,
Mm-hmm.
that's significant. Like that, some people seem to think the Green Party is polling at like 0.3%. Like it's not like the People's Party with Maxime Bernier, Canada's
No, no,
version of Trump
no.
or whatever.
That's
There
it.
actually are a lot of people who support the Green Party. And I think I looked at the statistics the other day. The Green Party and the Bloc both had like 7.5%. But when you translate that to seats, the Bloc got like 33 seats in the projection and the Greens got 3, despite the fact that they literally had the same amount of support
Mm-hmm.
because of Canada's electoral system and stuff like that. But I'd really like to say to people who might be like, oh, they might think the Green Party doesn't have a lot of support. The Green Party has 7.5% is a large amount of support. And if Canada had proportional representation, that would be well over 30 seats in Parliament, which would have a significant influence, because the Liberals would not be able to win a majority if it was a proportional representation system. So I'd really like to influence people there, that it is important. There is support for the Green Party, and there really is a viable opportunity here to change the Green Party, and also further actually go into the next election. We're in a pandemic. Justin Trudeau's had a million scandals.
Yeah.
The Conservatives are probably going to elect Peter MacKay or whoever. And I don't know how much, I don't think a lot of people will like them. The NDP's also been struggling. There really is the potential that if there's an election like not too long or still while the pandemic's going, the Greens really could. They're at 7.5%. That could really skyrocket, because Canadians are tired of Justin Trudeau.
Yes, and they're really tired in general about all the other parties. The reality also is that the last elections, we weren't clear on what we stand for. We had left-wing policies in our platform, and we had a slogan that was centrist slogan. It just did not make any kind of sense. But with a leader like me, we will be clear on what we stand for. We're just going to be very clear on our messaging, and our ideas will be. We're going to be talking to everybody instead of actually talking to the members or the scholars or people that have PhDs. Very often, like people weren't understanding what we were, and that or thought or were thinking that we were a one policy party, but we're not. We have many ideas, and we have one of the most progressive. And yes, the Green Party of Canada has not had electoral success, and we could be doing much better, but we have made changes. The marriage equality and the legalization of cannabis are examples that started off as Green Party policies, and now they're almost taken for granted. So to neglect our impact on Canadian politics is a mistake, and I'm telling you guys, we just have a great opportunity right here.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you very much for joining us on the show. And I'd just like to say to everyone, please, if you're on the fence about this, please consider joining, supporting, especially people who might be skeptical about joining a party or something. I did it before with the NDP. You join the party, you can have a real influence on shaping the discourse and the politics of a party in a really important way. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kiefer. Thank you.
Everybody, I will put the links on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. It'll all be in the description. If you have any questions, ask me.
Also, I'm a young woman of color. I'm 32. I'm an immigrant from Syria. I have a stake in the game. I will live the climate crisis if nothing changes. And I really feel like we need representation. We need young leaders to step up and change Canadian politics. Unfortunately, if us, the youth, don't get involved, and if socialists and intersectional feminists don't get involved to make the choices necessary to save us from extinction and from the system, who will?